titled Psychological First Aid Addressing Mental Health Distress During Disasters. With reverence, I acknowledge the gracious presence of Dr. Chapo KV, Principal, Alfonsa College, Tiruvambadi, Dr. Gidin VG, HOD, Psychology Department, the eminent resource person of the day, Anupama S., Lecturer, University of Kerala, Calicut. Now, I invite our Principal, Dr. Chapo KV, for the inaugural function.
A warm good morning to one and all. From Chair of the Principal, with great pleasure, I welcome all of you to this webinar organized by the Department of Psychology, Alfonsa College, Tiruvambadi, Calicut. Alfonsa College, Tiruvambadi is an arts and science college run by the Education Trust of the Diocese of Tamarasheri and affiliated to the Calicut University. First of all, on this occasion, I congratulate Dr. Gidin, Head of the Department of Psychology, and his colleagues, Mrs. Neha Matthew, Ms. Avani, Ms. Adina Joseph, and also the IPS wing of the college for organizing and materializing this national webinar. I also congratulate and welcome our resource person, Dr. Anupama S. She is a well-known psychologist, academician, and researcher. Today she speaks on a very current, relevant topic: psychological first aid, addressing mental health distress during disasters. I am very happy to see that many of the students, research scholars, faculty members, and other academicians are participating from more than 50 institutions from various parts of this nation. With all your permission and also with your virtual presence, I am formally inaugurating this national event. Once again, I welcome you and wish you a very happy, fruitful, and useful academic session. Thank you very much.
There are a lot of warning signs that followed the global pandemic. As in, we are confronted with the feeling of a safety that is lost. We are confronting an uncertain situation where we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, whether we'll be ever safe again. And we are all waiting and looking forward to a vaccine being developed for the virus. So a small virus has stopped the entire world and has confined us all to our homes. But even then, we have found out a way to relate to each other through social media or through webinars like this. And despite that, there is a break in the social institutions, as in the schools have locked down, and a lot of social institutions like malls or religious places have all closed up. And a lot of people used to depend on a lot of social institutions for their psychological needs as well. So a sudden shutdown of all these things have affected us emotionally, psychologically, mentally, and even spiritually. It has affected our happiness. And there is a lot of people who are stuck at home, who are forced to work from home and also manage the family equations. As in, they have to manage all the family responsibilities and balance their work from home. When the margin disappears between the work and home thing, they are facing a lot of stress, especially women, because they have to take care of the domestic responsibilities, and they are forced to work from home. And few of the parents, they have to manage their kids, not just take care of them, but also manage their classwork, as online classes have also started. And the economic impact also is immense. It's huge. It just led to an economic slowdown. There is a lot of job loss involved, especially youngsters. They have lost their jobs, and people who were comfortably working outside India are now preferring to come back to India because they don't feel safe outside. They realize that in case of a pandemic or in case of emergency, the citizens, they will be preferred over them. Many of them did not receive the emergency medical care required. So obviously, this also resulted in a social impact. When jobs are lost, when feeling of safety is lost, when social institutions are closing down, obviously the social impact is also huge. For instance, the violence, individual as well as social violence is rising. We have come across many cases where of child abuse, of domestic violence, of gender-based violence, and a lot of things like that are happening in and around the country. So this is the context in which we are right now placed. So let us see what we can do about. Before that, let me discuss a favoritism that is going on in and around our policy circles, in our social approach to the pandemic. We see that we always prefer to take care of our physical self, as in we brush every day, we take bath every day, we take care of our body. But what are we doing, even in this pandemic or even otherwise? What are we doing to take care of our mental well-being? We are taught from a very early age how to brush our teeth. We are taught from a very early age that it is important to take bath every day. But how do you go about cleaning your mind of the clutter, of all the negativity, of all the negative emotions and all that? So let us put this in context. What I am trying to do is that or we are trying to, as a community, change our approach to our mental well-being. We have to invest in a bank of positive emotions. Only when you invest in a bank or do some saving activity can we withdraw from a bank. Just like that, if we invest in our positive emotion, in times of emergencies, we can withdraw from that bank of positive emotion and help our mental well-being. So this psychological first aid, the very first approach of psychological first aid is investing in your psychological health. So for that, we need to start from our awareness of psychological injuries. What do you mean by psychological injuries? If we say about, or if we even think about physical injuries, if we close our eyes and imagine, we can imagine what a physical injury will look like, from the best to the worst. But if we close our eyes and try to imagine psychological injuries, it is not that clear. So we always, we don't have a clear perspective of psychological injuries. So practicing mental hygiene is very crucial in this, even in this emergency and even otherwise. It is important to practice mental hygiene and important to nurture our mental health. So we have to create a bank of positive emotions and experiences so that we can make our withdrawal when we are withdrawal from this bank of positive emotion when we are in dearth of these positive experiences and feelings. So psychological injuries. So let us start with the awareness of what what I mean by the concept and what is generally meant by the concept of psychological injuries. It could be failure. We are all familiar with the concept. It could be rejection. It could be guilt. It could be loneliness, something that we are confronted with or bombarded with these days, loneliness. It could be brooding and rumination, or it could be low self-esteem. These are all psychological injuries. So let us, I will be dealing with a few of these injuries in detail so that we get an idea about how it affects us. So rejection. Rejection means feeling of being deliberately excluded from a social circle, from a group of friends. Simply said, it means our friends ignoring us. We are all familiar with the concept. At some point or the other, we are all familiar with the concept of rejection. It is a psychological injury. It injures us. As in, the interesting thing is, a few studies were conducted and they did an MRI scan to find out how psychological rejection affect our brain. And they found out that it is equivalent to physical pain. As in, if we are suffering from physical pain, certain areas of our brain responds to it. Rejection mimics physical pain in our brain. So it is that bad. And evolutionarily, if we discuss rejection, we have all learned the concept that human beings are social animals. So we cannot exist in isolation. It is important to be part of a tribe or part of a group to become to survive. So rejection is evolutionarily not conductive for survival as far as human beings are concerned. So evolutionary aspect of rejection, we are wired in such a way that whenever we face rejection, we go into a high alert. We feel pain. We are forced to take one step or the other to face this rejection. That is one of the first psychological injuries. Next one is loneliness.
Ma'am, please switch on your audio.
Ma'am, your voice is mute.
Okay now?
Yes, ma'am.
Audible?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Right. So we were dealing with loneliness. As I said, it's a subjective feeling, and you are confronted with the feeling of loneliness. You could be part of a crowd and still feel lonely. So no matter where you are, in a crowd or alone, you could feel this loneliness. And interestingly, this also affects our immunity, our longevity, our life expectancy, and interestingly, chronic loneliness. There is something called chronic loneliness, which is a trap. As in, when you feel lonely, you fail to reach out to others, and you start building a cocoon around yourself, and you stay inside that cocoon. And when you don't reach out to others, obviously people are not able to figure out what is going on inside your head, and they will not reach out to you, and you will feel even lonelier, and the trap continues, and this vicious cycle continues. So the next psychological injury is brooding and rumination. We are all familiar with this concept also. Engaging in deep thoughts that make one upset. That is thinking and overthinking about stuff that has already happened, that is not within our control. Picking at upsetting experience. Just like this is very similar to picking at wounds. If we are physically wounded and if we pick on that wound worsens, bleeds, and perhaps even goes to the next level where we are facing pain. So brooding is just like that. When we are picking at negative or upsetting experiences, things get worse. It is maladaptive. It is unhealthy. It is an unhealthy self-reflection. Again, the vicious cycle repeats. You brood more. You are instead of it is said that it makes us passive. It affects our problem-solving ability. So if we are continuously ruminating on negative experiences, it interferes with our ability to find realistic solutions for problems. And then there is guilt. So I am talking about a lot of negative concepts. I am priming you to a lot of negative concepts. I will soon be dealing with how to deal with all this negative emotions. So stay positive for the time being. Next one is affective state. Guilt. Affective. It is again an affective state. Experiencing conflict at having done something that one believes one shouldn't have done. That is guilt. That is, you feel guilty for doing something that you shouldn't have done. There are degrees of it. There is mild guilt, there is moderate guilt, and there is severe guilt. And the higher the degree, the worse it gets. It affects our relationship. It affects our ability to relate to other people. You might be familiar with the character Dobby from Harry Potter. You can, if you think back, the person Dobby, the character, punishes himself for talking or interacting with Harry. Ultimately, he ends up hurting both Harry and his master and himself. So that is how guilt affects relationship in general. It poisons our ability to interact positively with people. These are all the psychological injuries that affect us. So next is the concept of emotional hygiene, the very first step of psychological first aid. Emotional hygiene means cleaning up your emotions or being mindful. It begins with your awareness of your stressors, the emotional trauma that you are facing, your suffering, your pain. So you will have to focus on those, and you will have to do this on a daily basis. You have to build your awareness about all this emotional trauma that you are going through, whatever it is. It could be mild, it could be moderate, it could be severe, but you have to build your awareness regarding this. You have to focus your time and energy for emotional hygiene, not on focusing on negative emotion, but building the concept of emotional hygiene. That is like, let us imagine that you are going to invest in a bank. You will have to open an account. You will have to invest the money. Just like that, for an emotional hygiene concept to really happen, you will have to be aware of your emotions. You will have to start building your emotional health. So how do you go about building your emotional hygiene? First, you apply emotional band-aids for what we do for physical wounds. Very similar to that. When we are wounded, we know how to take care of our wounds. We clean it up. We apply a band-aid. Just like that, for emotional injuries like guilt or like rumination, you realize that you're ruminating, and then you try to apply emotional band-aids to it. There are different strategies for that. I will be going into detail in the next slides. Build your emotional immune system. First thing is, be kind to yourself. Whenever we face a failure, whenever we face rejection, what we do is we start criticizing ourselves. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done this. This is the worst thing I could have done. I could have done better. So first thing you do is self-compassion. You have to learn self-compassion. What you say to yourself is very important. And treat yourself with the same compassion as a good friend. What will you do if a friend approaches you saying that she or he is in a feeling down? You will not say things to make that person feel further down, right? You will try to do something. You will try to say something to improve their emotional feel or improve their negativity. You will try to bring that person over to the positive side. Just like that, be your own best friend. Learn self-compassion, and whenever you go through some psychological injury, make sure that you are compassionate to yourself. Treat yourself with some dignity and respect, and try to overcome those in that manner, not by criticizing yourself. And whenever you feel that you need help, that you can't do this by yourself, seek help, reach out to professionals or even friends. And especially during loneliness, it is difficult because we are stuck in a phase where, in a cocoon, where we feel that, excuse me, again, am I mute?
No, ma'am, no.
So reach out to important people in your life. So how to go about doing this? First is, there are three aspects. There are cognitive aspects, there are emotional aspects, and then there are behavioral aspects. Changing your conviction, breaking the cycle of negativity. This is not as easy as it sounds. You'll be thinking that this is easy to say, but very difficult to implement. Yes, you are right. First, just like it is difficult to save money, it is as difficult to invest in your emotional well-being. You have to make an effort to break the cycle of negativity that you're stuck in. First two convictions that you can think is realizing that we are valued, realizing that we are important to at least one or two people. We are important to a group of people, obviously, but we have to begin with thinking how important you are to the world, how important you are to the this is where the negativity or injury hurts us the most. When we are injured, we have a tendency to think that psychologically, when you are injured, we have a tendency to think that we are not valued, we are not important to the world. That is when you feel like giving up or taking your life or something like that. So you have to deal with these disordered perceptions. So how to go about doing that? You have to establish emotional and social connections. This is possible even in quarantine or even in lockdown. It is possible to reach out to people emotionally and socially. You just have to pick up your mobile phone, or you just have to pick up a Google Meet and meet with people or interact with people. It is possible. So make sure that you engage in social connections. Studies show that even a simple hi to a stranger can improve our social feeling of well-being. So it is that social connections are very important. Emotional connections are very important for us as a human being. So now we strategize on how to make the emotional investments. There is a sigh of relief technique. There is a leap technique, which I'll be dealing with in the later slides. Art, meditation, journaling, gratitude, and happiness box. Maybe you can figure out what these things are even from the name itself. So next is sigh of relief technique. What is this about? It is as indicated by the picture, saying thank God, or whatever it is. If you don't believe in God, thank whatever the universe. Thank that taking a deep breath and letting it out. That is what the sigh of relief technique is. This is very similar to, maybe you have heard of breathing techniques. Maybe it is about facing your breath. So breathing is correlated to our emotional and psychological states. Whenever, for example, whenever we are tensed, we tend to take shallow breaths, just like that. So becoming aware of your pace of breathing can improve your emotional well-being. So build your awareness about build your awareness on your own rate of breathing, and try to modify that. Try to breathe, take deep breaths whenever you feel tensed or whenever you feel negative. Learn to observe your breathing pattern. Give yourself a breather. Take a sigh of relief as often as possible, and try breathing techniques. I would right now be demonstrating a finger breathing technique. Take your fingers, take your hand out. Hopefully you guys will follow this along with me. Am I visible? Yeah. So take your hands out like this. Hold your hands in front of you like this, and then you have to trace your hand with your other finger in your other hand, like this. Okay, very clear on this. Next, we will implement or incorporate the breathing into this technique. When you go up, you breathe in. Take a deep breath, as deep as possible. And when you go down, you breathe out. And then when you go up, you breathe in. And you go down, you breathe out. Try to make your exhalation deeper than or longer than your inhalation. So this is all basically breathing technique, but very doable. This is not correlated to meditation or relaxation right at the moment. These are very simple breathing techniques that anybody can do anywhere, because we are carrying our hand everywhere, right? So you don't need a bead or you don't need a meditation instrument to follow this breathing technique. Let us try it one more time. You breathe in when you go up, and you breathe out when you go down. Just like that, follow all your 5 fingers, and you can visibly, you'll be able to feel the sense of well-being that you get from following this simple breathing technique. So imagine the wellness that you can gain from following deep meditation or deep breathing techniques related to or correlated, usually correlated with yoga. So at least do this, at least do the finger breathing techniques. Okay, that is what sigh of relief technique is about. The next one, the next technique that we deal with is leaf technique. So this is also again pretty new, but doable. Okay, find a leaf. It is possible to find a leaf from your surroundings, right? You don't have to go hopefully outside. You don't have to violate the lockdown rules, but still you'll be able to find a leaf and trace the veins. Try to trace the detailed veins in a leaf. And first, there are some, you will realize that there are some obvious veins in a leaf. Try to trace the veins with your finger. You are using 2 techniques. You are using both sensation and perception here. And then when you are done tracing the obvious veins, you try to trace the subtle veins with your eyes. The veins in this leaf are so detailed and so beautiful that it will automatically help you relax. So this is how you correlate the aspect of nature and its beauty into your relaxation, on your way of relating to the environment. So also you can incorporate art into it by trying leaf stamping. That is, you dip the leaf in a color, in watercolor or whatever, and try to paste the leaf onto a paper. Trace the pattern using color. You can use a pen or pencil and trace the leaf onto paper. Be as detailed as possible. Don't worry about being artistic. Don't worry about the output. Just the action or the engaging in this act itself is a way to relax and build your resilience. So the next technique, there is art meditation. These are all very popular ways of relating to a psychological or health. That is, you can try meditating through art. Sometimes people find it extremely difficult to sit and concentrate on a point, or for those people, you can try art meditation. That is, you can sketch, you can use paint, or you can doodle. Simply take a paper, follow some pattern using even the smallest of art supply can help you do this. You just need a paper, a random paper. You don't even need a art paper. You can take any paper, and you can take any pen or sketch pen or even pencil, and try to doodle. Doodle means it could follow a mandala pattern, it could follow anything, whatever comes to your mind. This is like a free association. You is a technique in psychotherapy, but this is not related to that. You are trying to relate yourself, or you are trying to relate your emotional state by tracing art or using art. There is also music and movement therapy, very popular. You will find a lot of materials online for music and movement therapy. How to use music to control your emotional state, how to use movement, as in simply following a dance pattern can improve your emotional or feeling of well-being. And even cooking. These days, cooking is a super popular form to relax. You can cook, and the output need not be great, but still you feel that there is an output, and you can relate to others. You can give the cooking your product to other people, relate to other people in that way, or you can eat yourself and feel happy that okay, I can cook. Many people realize during the lockdown that they can cook. So that is also a way of. These are all ways of relating to our sense of self, our sense of well-being. Okay. Then there is a journaling technique. This is also simply said, it is about writing down your thoughts and feelings to understand them more clearly. A lot of thoughts and feelings may be jumbled up inside our head. So the easiest way to bring clarity, notebook, or use any notebook available at home, or a diary. Find the right space, as in find the right space in the journal, as well as where you are sitting and doing going to do your writing. And even online blogging is okay. If you are you just have to create an online portal and start blogging. You don't have to share it with others. If you're comfortable, also share it. Ask yourself questions, and finally, ultimately, the most important step: write it down, and enjoy the process, the whole process of journaling. Then there is a most important aspect we keep ignoring: gratitude. That is, simply said, it is about being thankful to yourself, thankful to the world. Show your appreciation. Don't be afraid to show your appreciation to your significant other, to yourself, and to the universe for all the things that are available to you. Being thankful for whatever, even in the case of pandemic, many of us should be thankful for a comfortable home, for our parents, for our other half, for our children. So it is about showing appreciation for whatever we have. Standing and viewing the world from the perspective of what we have rather than what we don't have. We can worry about not being able to go out, not being able to go out shopping or go to a religious place, but we have to be thankful. We have to express our gratitude and show our appreciation for being able to sit at home safely. Many people even don't have that kind of safety. We can always pray at home. We can always pray anywhere, and we have to return kindness. That is, relate to people. If you understand that somebody is in trouble, if you understand or you realize that this person is not in an emotionally oriented place, reach out to that person and help in whichever way you can. Maybe simply listening to that person can help that person heal. Then there is the happiness box. This is about, again, it is a kind of a journaling, but you do this in a box. You write down something that made you happy. There are obviously things you'll have to maybe sit and think. If you are in a depressed state, it is difficult to remember things that made you happy. So this is like the investment that you make in the emotional bank. Whenever you feel happy, make sure you write it down on a sheet of paper, you write it down somewhere. Then roll that paper and keep it inside a box. Store them in a box. When you feel down, go back to the box and tap into the happiness. This is like making the withdrawal from an ATM. So do that also, and this will all help you bring clarity to your, and ultimately help you build your emotional health. This is how you go about building your emotional resilience. These things sound very simple, but these things are proven to be helpful for building your emotional. There are a lot of research involved in all these techniques that seems to say that it brings happiness to you. For example, if I mention the gratitude technique again, if you write a letter of gratitude to someone important to you and share it with that person, first you write the letter of gratitude, then you read it out to the person. Then that person will feel happy and thankful that you feel this way about that person. You will also feel happy and thankful for that person's presence in your life. And this happiness can last almost 3 months. Just a simple letter of gratitude, writing a simple letter of gratitude can make you feel happy, make you feel positive for 3 months. I'm just not simply saying this. There are a lot of research involved in this techniques and in this methods. So next is the concept of helping others. Now we are done with the concept of helping ourselves. Now we deal with the concept of helping others. So what is a psychological first aid as a perspective where we help others? It is a compassionate and supportive presence for other people, especially those suffering from acute distress. It is you can assess the person and help him. If you want to help a person, you don't have to wait for a psychological training. But this is not a substitute for counseling or therapy or psychotherapy or anything like that. This is what we do as people who can reach out to other people. Maybe it is our friend, maybe it is our family member. You can do this, follow these steps and help reach out to that person. Okay. So this concept, psychological first aid as a concept for helping others came about, was introduced by American Psychology Association 1954. It promotes community healing. It was said that if you follow a model of psychological first aid, it helps people recover from trauma and promote community healing in a holistic fashion. Maybe their professional help is not always accessible, not always available. So community well-being can be ensured only through providing mutual support. So this is a more systematic way of providing that mutual support. Let me remind you again, this is not a substitute for psychotherapy. This can never be a treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, or this cannot be a substitute for counseling. But this is an initial level of care. So I will be discussing one of the models of psychological first aid, which is RAPID. It is a PFA model by Johns Hopkins University. Okay. So this is the model. RAPID PFA model. RAPID means RAPID are acronyms which stand for RAPID. R stands for rapport and reflective listening. A stands for assessment. P for prioritization. Intervention is I, and D stands for disposition and follow-up. This is a cyclic process. I'll deal with all these acronyms in detail in the next slides. So RAPID, earliest point of, remember again, this is the earliest point in continuum of care. So just following a psychological first aid might not help a few people, but it will help a lot of people to heal, and it will promote a community sort of healing. It is said that this pandemic is going to affect the mental well-being in a major way. It is going to impact mental well-being. It is going to affect people who are already clinical population will face a worsening of symptoms, and people who are not clinical population might go into a state where they are suffering from psychological illness. So a supportive community is always the first step towards stopping.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I cannot see your slides.
Oh, okay. Okay, now visible?
No.
Are the slides visible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So we were dealing with the RAPID technique. These acronyms mean certain things. Assessment again is not psychological assessment. It is not diagnosis. It is the ability to tell. Just like you take a broad view of the society and you realize that this person might need help. This person might need support. Especially people who are first line workers. Could be teachers, educators. It could be spiritual leaders. It could be people who are involved directly with the community. Not necessarily psychologists, also psychologists who are probably student community of psychologists. How do you react to a emergency? You survive, you make a initial assessment, not anything scientific, but an assessment where you use your instinct to find out who needs help. And prioritization. Obviously, when you find out that certain group needs help, you respond depending on the urgency level. And don't worry, I'll be dealing with slightly more detail in the next slide. Intervention is about how to how to go about stabilizing and mitigating the impact of this pandemic. And disposition and follow-up means how effective your intervention was. Intervention means not assessment or a diagnosis, but your supportive presence. Did it make a difference? So first technique is rapport and reflective listening. You establish a rapport. This is something that psychologists, probably students, are very familiar with. We always begin our psychological experiments with the sentence, first establish a rapport. But how do you go about doing that? So you introduce yourself in a respectful fashion to a person who's come for a imagine that you're a relief worker and you are confronted with a lot of people who needs help, especially during the floods hit Kerala. A lot of people lost their homes, a lot of people lost their comfort zone, and a lot of students were involved in relief work. They were doing this, providing psychological first aid. Perhaps not as just the tip of the iceberg, just giving initial care for people who are suffering. So engage in active and reflective listening. These are concepts that you might have come across in counseling psychology. Importance of understanding and trust. You have to let that person talk. You have to observe. You have to listen. You have to care for that person, not in a artificial way, but actually care. And when you do all this, you gain their trust and perhaps even compliance. That is following, for example, many people don't wear masks, or many people spit on the ground. This could lead to the further spread of the pandemic. So how do you go about gaining compliance and trust from these people? You have to make a portal where you make them feel that they are heard, they are understood, and that is the only way you can gain compliance for spreading the stop of the disease. And paraphrasing again, you guys may be familiar with, but again, it is open. Paraphrasing means repeating what the other person said in your own sentence, making sure that you understood what the person meant. So ask open-ended questions, not "Are you okay?" or for example, when you feel that the other person is suffering, you most commonly ask question is "Are you okay?" That is a close-ended question. The person will most instinctively respond that "Yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine." So don't ask that. Instead, ask a question like "How are you? What are you doing right now?" or "How is your life?" Just an open-ended question where the person feels that, oh, you want to hear what this going on in that person's life. So ask open-ended question. That is the first way to, or the first step of the rapid model. The next step is assessment. Again, this is informal assessment, nothing to do with therapy or diagnosis or anything like that. This is like surveillance. You take a bird eye view, just as shown in the picture. You take a bird eye view of what is happening in your society or in your community. You make sure, if you're involved in relief work, you make sure that these people can meet their immediate physical and psychological needs. Have someone to talk to, someone to listen to them, someone to take care of their immediate needs, and allow the person to tell their story. Their narrative is very important. Their understanding of the pandemic, their understanding of the event that happened to them is very crucial, and their reaction to that, each person's reaction is different. So you are depending on your the way you built your rapport and your the way you used your reflective listening, the assessment and even the actions to be taken for that particular person varies. No two persons respond to the same way to a pandemic or to an emergency. So it is very important to make the assessment in a systematic way and clarify ambiguous aspects. For example, the person is responding that I am depressed. I don't feel like living anymore. So your understanding of depression may be very different from what that person is trying to communicate to you. So clarify those ambiguous aspects and make sure that what that person means is. So you ask the question back. What do you mean by when you say that you are depressed? What do you mean by? Could you like elaborate a little bit more? Don't be intrusive about it, but be very in a very skillful manner. Maybe when we interact with more people, we learn how to go about doing this in a less intrusive way. Don't be disrespectful. Don't try to find solution for the problem. They are not exactly looking for that. Interesting thing is, we all know solutions for all our problems, but sometimes our understanding is so clouded that we are unable to reach that solution. So it is about being a mirror that reflects what the solutions are in an ideal fashion. So prioritization, this is the next step. Again, there are three group of people: eustress group, distress group, and dysfunctional group. So this is about prioritization. Is about who needs immediate care. So domains to observe are emotional aspect, cognitive aspect, behavioral, physiological, and even spiritual. So eustress groups are group. This is not positive stress. Perhaps these people also have negative reaction to a stress, but they are able to function. They are able to execute their daily activities. They are able to be responsible to people who depend on them. These are eustress group. What you do is you just observe them and give a supportive presence to them. That is enough for them. Distress groups come between the dysfunctional. I will explain dysfunctional next. Dysfunctional means they are not able to function at all. They are emotionally affected. They are completely confused. They are cognitively, they are muddled up. They are not able to function. They are not able to execute their daily activities. They are completely confused, cognitively, emotionally, and even behaviorally. They are showing confusion. These are the people who need immediate help and support. So you try to relate to these people first. And distress group comes between both this group. They are neither dysfunctional nor all that positive. Maybe they are able to execute some function, but still they are more distressed than usual. So intervention. Next is the most important step of the initial care. Intervention again. This is not therapy, neither surgery. This can be done by people who want to provide compassionate and supportive presence. You can be a psychology professional. You can be a mental health professional and still provide the supports. How to do it? There are 2 steps. Stabilize acute arousal. That is, the person is facing very stressful situation or is dysfunctional. Then remove the provocative cues. That is, remove that person from the provocative environment. Encourage task focus. That is, as in distract that person, help them do something productive. Allow catharsis. Allow that person to talk and delay impulsive action. That is, whenever you are muddled up, you take impulsive actions like perhaps take your life or commit suicide. That is, your ability is to cause some sort of a delay in the impulsive action and use distractions. Distractions could be providing some sort of a positive distraction where maybe even ask them to volunteer, ask them to help somebody, or even provide some sort of distraction through art or therapy, not therapy exactly, through some sort of a positive distraction through art therapy or through music, or it can exactly intervene such a way that dysfunctional groups cannot be intervened through distraction. They might need medical support, they might need professional help, but even then to stop them from taking adverse action, that is doable. And mitigate acute distress, that is, educate them, normalize them, that what our government is doing. We are regularly given updates on what is happening in the field, how we have to go about our life. Normalize this emotional reaction. Tell them that this is normal. This whatever adverse reactions you are facing, this is normal reaction to stress, a normal reaction to a pandemic, and reassure them. This reassurance itself can mitigate the acute response. And perhaps even learn a few stress management techniques. A lot of again learning materials are available. Breathing techniques are a stress management way of stress management. Manage misinformation, very important. That is again it is done in Kerala because every day there is a press release and there is a news conference done to communicate correct information, and you can do that too. You can do, we got a lot of distress call at the department saying that we are afraid of coronavirus, we are afraid that we are infected. A person who was sneezing touched us and we believe that we are infected. This kind of misinformation has to be removed, and for that you will have to build your emotional you build your information level also. How is corona spreading, and what causes a spread, how to prevent the spread, etc. You have to learn a basic information about the pandemic or whatever the emergency situation is, and communicate the information. Reframe, as in this is similar to the gratitude technique. Be grateful. Tell that person that yeah, you lost your house, but still it seems like you survived, and reframe and help that person refocus on whatever he has rather than focusing on what all he lost. So these are the intervention, simple intervention techniques that you can use. And then the next and final step is disposition and follow up. As in, you just don't make the intervention and let the person go. You make the effort to follow that person at least through a mobile or through a simple call, and make sure that person is doing okay. So make sure that the person is at least in the eustress group or in the distress group. You keep observing that person, keep in touch, and if after first, second, or even third follow-up, if the person is still distressed, dysfunctional, then ensure that another level of care is available to that person. It could be professional psychological care. It could be if the person has dysfunction. If it's a spiritual level, then it could be a spiritual leader. Facilitate access to a higher level of care, a technical care. So this is also part of your responsibility. You can't just simply let go of a person. This is extremely taxing process. Sometimes we feel that did we make a difference? It is not about making the ultimate difference or finding the solution. It is about being there and feeling that you did something at least. So that is it. That is the end of my presentation. These are a few of the references that you can refer to if you would like to know more about the topic. These are basic references. There are a lot of topics or there are a lot of materials available online in YouTube and Coursera, and there are a lot of books. Try to read up and on all this. One of the best books of emotional first aid is Healing by a book by Guy Winch. Came out in 2013, still very popular. There is a course about the science of well-being, which teaches you how to be happy by Yale University. Again, Coursera. It's a free course, but if no, for the certificate you have to pay, but the materials are all available for free. And the model I discussed about the psychological first aid, Johns Hopkins University's, the course's name is psychological first aid. You can go there and observe those, take that course for free. You won't necessarily get the certificate without paying, but you can take the materials and learn from them. They have a lot of simulation videos in which they teach you how to go about doing the various steps of the emotional first aid. They show you live videos on how to do it and how not to do it. So it will give you a clearer perspective than a one-hour webinar on how to do a psychological first aid. So that's it. Thank you for being the patient listener. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. Hopefully there was some clarity to the, at least I tried to bring some clarity to the concept of psychological first aid. Any questions are welcome. How was it? Was it anything that you expected? Did it meet your expectation, or was it completely something completely different from what you expected from this section? At least you can respond to that, I guess. You can switch on your mic and say what you felt about the section, or if you would like to share something, anything at all.
Ma'am, please check the chat. They are messaging there.
Excuse me?
Please check the chat. They are messaging there.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you, Kaveri. Oh, wow. Immediate psychological. Oh, I got a few responses on psychological first aid, which were right responses. Immediate psychological intervention, immediate support provided by mental health caretakers or support group. Very good. Immediate intervention given to individuals, give a proper mental aid, not dealing with PTSD. Psychological first aid does not deal with post-traumatic stress. It is a very basic level of care. Immediate service given to a person in crisis to get an insight or relief. Great, that is almost right. Immediate support provided by mental health. Not just mental health, first line workers. It could be educators, it could be spiritual leaders. They have a role in society. They are immediately accessible to society and they can help. And then there are a lot of questions about some. Then there are a lot of things about slides not being visible. I hope they were visible. Anything else? Thank you for thanking me. I hope you guys found what we are looking for. Make sure that you go through these materials, and if you really want to do psychological first aid, build on your psychological skills, your reflective listening skills, your ability to survive, your ability to make that initial level of assessment. It is very important that you learn, and a lot of materials are available online, thankfully. In this, even in this lockdown situation, has opened up a new opportunity, immense opportunity to people to learn a lot of new things. Whatever you want to learn, it could be stress management, it could be relaxation. If you want to go about learning it in a scientific fashion, just give a Google search. A random Google search will reveal what you guys can do to improve your psychological well-being. I don't see any questions right now in the chat section. If anyone would like to ask, please go ahead. Are you bored out of your minds by the section? Hopefully not. Any questions at all? So let me check the YouTube handle. I am not sure whether it was live, but if whether any questions there. I think it was not live, so there were not many. I don't see any questions there also. So hopefully the HOD will save me from the awkward silence. HOD is simply smiling as usual. Hello, HOD. Any questions? So shall I close?
Please. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing with us your words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Due to some technical issues, our HOD can connect on time. So
Oh,
now I invite Dr. Geetin VG to interact with you.
Sorry all, I was supposed to give you the introduction of our resource person. Due to some network issue, I was not able to reach you. Okay, our resource person, Mrs. Anupama S, currently working as lecturer in University of Kerala. She is a first rank holder in psychology for both her bachelor's and master's degree. She has additional master's degree in sociology and public administration. Over the years, she has worked as a lecturer, SIA consultant, and talk show host for Doordarshan channel. She pursued her research in corporate social responsibility. Thank you, your esteemed presence and cooperation. And I kindly request all of you to fill the feedback form so that you get the certificate of this webinar. I invite Mrs. Sneha Matthew for vote of thanks.
Only. And we can do nothing to avoid them, but they are there for a reason. Only when we have overcome them will we understand why they were there, said Paulo Coelho. On behalf of the Department of Psychology, Alfonso College, Tiruvambadi, I think it's a great pleasure to express my sentiments of gratitude to all those who have worked for the success of this webinar on psychological first aid. First of all, I would like to thank our principal, Dr. Chako Kevi, for his support and encouragement in organizing this event. Thank you, sir. Finding gratitude and appreciation is the key to resilience. I would like to say a big thank you for the resource person of today, Ms. Anupama, academician and a researcher in Kerala University, Karivattam, for her informative talk about how to support people in the aftermath of crisis events. Thank you, ma'am. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheel starts rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and bird's eye for details. All this made possible by the joint effort of the convener of this event, Dr. Geetin, HOD, Department of Psychology, and coordinators, Ms. Avani and Ms. Ajina. Thank you all. I specifically thank the people who have been the backbone of this event. Our manager, Father Karya Mangaril, Vice Principal, Father Shinish Agustin, Accuracy Coordinator, Father Gio Matthew, and Father George Matthew. Thank you all. I wish to express my gratitude to all participants who have attended the webinar with great interest and enthusiasm. I am sure this event helps you all to become a bounce back to normalcy in times of uncertainty. I would also like to acknowledge the technical team responsible for the success of this seminar. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, ma'am.